harmonies. Day 1, the screech of metal and bones. The last thing I remember was the tinny harmonies of my mom's 80s playlist bleeding from the van speakers. Then a screech, a sickening crunch, and a world that tilted sideways. We had been somewhere in the desolate heart of Nevada, the endless ribbon of highway shimmering under the relentless sun. My sister, Chloe, was probably dozing, drool tracing a map on her cheek, and Dad was, as always, trying to get a word in edgewise with Mom's never-ending stream of anecdotes. Typical family road trip. Now the van was a mangled mess of metal and shattered glass, nestled precariously against a dusty embankment. The smell was acrid, dash burnt rubber, leaking gasoline, and something else ellipsis, something biological and foul. I coughed, pushing myself up from the wreckage, my head throbbing like a bass drum solo. I felt a sharp, burning pain in my left arm, and when I looked down, I saw a jagged piece of metal jutting out from my forearm, blood already soaking my sleeve. "Mom? Dad?" Chloe ? I yelled, my voice cracking. Silent, a heavy, oppressive silence that was punctuated only by the unsettling buzzing of flies. Panic bloomed in my chest, icy tendrils wrapping around my heart. I frantically scrambled through the debris, adrenaline masking the pain in my arm. My dad was slumped over the steering wheel, his face obscured by a network of spider-webbed glass, and oh God, no, he wasn't moving. I couldn't tell if he was alive or dead. Mom was thrown against her door, twisted at an unnatural angle, her eyes wide and empty, staring at nothing. Chloe was gone. She wasn't in the van. My hands trembled as I searched desperately. I stumbled out of the vehicle, each step a fresh jolt of pain. And then I saw it, lurching in the middle of the road, its skin a ghastly shade of gray, clothes tattered and dripping, was a thing. It was hunched, its limbs moving with a grotesque, jerky fluidity. Its face was a mask of putrefaction, eyes milky and vacant, jaw hanging open, revealing jagged teeth. And it was making a guttural, moaning sound that made my blood run cold. It was the thing that had caused the accident. It was the source of the biological stench. I had seen enough zombie movies to know what it was, what it meant. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. This was my family, my life, ripped apart by a walking corpse. I stumbled backward, falling and scrambling to get away. The thing started moving toward me, faster now, its outstretched hand reaching for me. Fear, pure and unadulterated, consumed me. I did not hesitate. I grabbed a tire iron that had been flung clear of the van, adrenaline surging through my battered body, and swung with all my might. The blow connected with sickening thud, and the thing went down. It didn't stay down, though. It just kept twitching, trying to get back up. I hit it again and again until it finally stopped moving. I stood there for a long time, panting, the tire iron slick in my hand, watching the stillness of what was once a human. The sun beat down, the smell of death hung heavy in the air, and I was alone. Truly alone. Day 2, the weight of loss. I spent most of the second day in a semi-catatonic state, picking through the wreckage, finding a few bottles of water, some granola bars, and a first aid kit. I cleaned my arm as best as I could, clumsily wrapping the wound, trying to ignore the cold dread that was settling in my bones. I buried my mom and dad next to the road, digging shallow graves with my hands. I couldn't find Chloe, but I knew she couldn't have gone far, not in her condition. I had to leave her. I had to leave them all. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Night fell, the desert air growing cold, the vast expanse of the sky littered with cold, indifferent stars. I huddled in the shell of the van, exhausted, hungry, and afraid. The silence was broken only by the occasional howl of coyotes and the distant moans of, well, I did not want to think about them. I fell into a restless sleep, haunted by images of twisting limbs and vacant eyes. Day 3, echoes in the dust. The sun dragged me awake. I had to move. The idea of lingering here, in this graveyard of my life, was unbearable. I scanned the horizon, nothing but endless desert, scrub brush, and the road stretching out like a metal snake. I grabbed a backpack, stuffed whatever supplies I had into it, and began walking, my arm throbbing with each step. The road was empty, eerily so. An occasional abandoned car was left by the side of the road, doors ajar, their owners surely in the same situation I was. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crunch of my boots on the gravel. By mid-afternoon, I was exhausted and close to giving up when I heard it. A faint sound, a whimper, coming from behind a cluster of rocks. I approached slowly, my tire iron at the ready, and found her. She was small, maybe 8 years old, with tear-streaked cheeks and matted brown hair. She was clutching a tattered teddy bear, her eyes wide with fear. She wasn't alone. Huddled behind her was an older man, maybe in his late 60s, cradling a shotgun in his lap. His face was weathered, his eyes wary but kind. "It is all right," I said softly, keeping my distance. "I am not going to hurt you." The man's gaze narrowed. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My name is Benjamin," I replied, lowering my weapon. I was on a road trip. There was an accident. I didn't have the strength to explain it all. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I'm Thomas. This is Lily." He gestured to the little girl. "We have been holed up here after everything went to hell." I learned that Thomas was a retired park ranger and that Lily was his granddaughter. They had been camping when the world had gone sideways and managed to avoid the initial chaos. We talked for hours, sharing our stories, finding a strange sort of comfort in our shared misery. Thomas was knowledgeable about survival, and he immediately knew how to deal with my arm, cleaning the wound properly and rewrapping it. That night, we shared the meager rations I had scrounged from the van, huddled around a small fire that Thomas had built. Lily even gave me a small, shy smile. It was the first time I had felt a hint of hope since the accident. Day 4, the road ahead. The next morning, after a breakfast of dried fruit, we made a plan. Thomas knew of a small town about 50 miles away, a place with a self-sustaining community that he hoped would offer some form of safety. It was a gamble, but it was better than staying here, vulnerable and alone. We set off on foot, Thomas taking the lead, his shotgun slung across his back. Lily walked between us, chattering about her teddy bear, the innocent sound, a stark contrast to the grim reality of our world. The day was long and difficult, the heat pressing down on us. We saw a few of them, shambling figures in the distance, their moans carried on the wind. We avoided them, sticking to the back roads, using the terrain as cover. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows, we reached an old abandoned gas station, its windows shattered, its pumps rusted. We decided to take shelter here for the night. It was safer than the open road. As we set about making camp, I couldn't help but look at Thomas and Lily. Just 3 days ago, I was with my family. Now I'm with these two strangers. But in this new world, perhaps we aren't strangers. Perhaps we are all that remains. I thought of my family again. I would never forget them. I would not let them be forgotten. I owed it to them to survive. I owed it to myself. I looked into fire, trying to hide my sorrow, trying to find any hope I could. We had survived the last 4 days, and I had to believe that we could survive many more. I had to believe that somewhere beyond the wasteland, there was a future for us, a chance to rebuild, a chance to live. And for the first time since the crash, I felt a flicker of something besides grief and fear. I felt a spark of resolve. We were survivors, and we would keep on surviving. We would face the apocalypse together.